episode X of Connected on Relay FM. This episode of Connected is brought to you by our friends at lynda.com, where you can instantly stream thousands of courses created by industry experts. For a free trial, visit lynda.com/connected, and also our friends at Hover, Simplified Domain Management. My name is Myke Hurley. I am joined, as always, by Mr. Federico Vitici. Hi, Federico.
Hey, Mike.
And Mr. Stephen Hackett.
Hey, boys.
Guys, big show today.
Big busy week.
Yeah, lots of little lovely things to talk about, including an Apple event, I suppose.
Yeah, with the last show to talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it wasn't too bad to be the last show to talk about it. Like, there wasn't.
No, we can sound super smart because we know what everybody else said.
Yeah.
Well, it was actually like 30 minutes of new stuff and 30 minutes of recap of old features and iOS 8, which was kind of weird, I think.
So we can recap the recap and recap the new stuff.
Yes, it's going to recap Bing all the way down.
We should be
recapping sounds like a knee surgery.
We should be the tech meme of Apple events.
Oh, no.
Explain to me what this means to you, Federico. I'm interested to know.
Like, do you know when you go on Tech Meme and you get all these headlines with the summaries about a specific topic, and like you have the bigger summary and like you have smaller headlines from like other websites? So if we do the recap of the recap, we can be sort of like aggregating news, you know? All
just
these
read
buzzwords.
Tech Meme to our audience. Like, just go to Tech Meme, read it all out.
Like we have Craig Federighi as a bigger headline, and then we have Tim Cook, you know? Like we could do like a little chart, you know? This is a fantastic business. This is a fantastic business idea, and you're not getting it. Trust me.
Yeah, I think we need a bit more blue sky thinkineering in here.
Did you say thinkineering?
Mm-hmm. You're clearly not synergizing your
Stop talking. I'm going to put you in the parking lot. Let's do.
Well, Myke is going to be in a parking lot in a few weeks. So.
I'm going to be permanently put in the parking lot.
Yeah, just living in a parking lot. Follow up. Let's do follow up. So follow up. That kind of hurt my throat. iPad versus Mac factors listeners wrote in questioning. So we talked a lot about, could Federico work just from a Mac, or excuse me, just from an iPad? Could I get rid of iOS? You see, it was subtle, but then we called attention to it, and now we're still talking about it. So a couple things. I was going to run these by you real quick. Typing speed and accuracy. So I am terrible on the iPad keyboard, both sizes. What about you guys?
I'm definitely faster on the iPhone than I think anything. But I think everybody knows that I'm accurate on nothing.
Yeah. I think
That's
I'm
a whole
faster.
Website.
I think I'm faster on the iPad Mini in portrait mode. Like I'm super fast in that orientation. Like surprisingly fast even. I'm faster than the iPhone on the iPad Mini. And now that I'm getting a new iPad, which we're going to talk about in a bit, I'm kind of afraid that I will lose my ability to be a fast thumb typist. What's the proper noun for this? Like thumb typist?
Thumb typist. Thumb typist works, I think.
Yeah. I'm very fast on the iPad Mini. In fact, I'm faster in that, sort of setup than in landscape mode on the iPad Mini, because in landscape, when I try to use like 2 or 4 fingers, I'm slower because I kind of cannot type with due to the space between the letters and the keys. Yeah, I prefer the iPad Mini in portrait mode, and I never use the split keyboard. Never. It's just weird.
It's really weird.
I always liked the split keyboard. I have to say that landscape typing on the 6 Plus is just a middle ground of horror. Like,
wow.
There's no good way to do it. Like you can't, like trying to type in the middle with your thumbs is uncomfortable because you kind of can't really reach that well into the middle so much just to make it comfortable. And you can't like put it onto the table and type with your like multiple fingers because the keys are too small. So I never typed in landscape anyway, and I still don't type in landscape. So I'm not losing anything, but it really isn't that great. If they put a split keyboard on this and just so I could use 2 thumbs, like that would be awesome. I would be happy with that, and that would work really well for me, but I'm just waiting. Just waiting, guys. And yes, I know there are scammy, weird keyboards that allow me to do it, but I'm just not on board with them. I don't like them, and they're weird, so I will not use them.
Up next, file storage stinks on iOS. I kind of agree. I think until iCloud Drive and document providers kind of become more widespread, like it's really cool. You can use document providers in iWork now.
Except Dropbox inexplicably just doesn't even nearly work at all.
It's still really new. I mean, I think it will. I think that file storage and like file management, which I think is what this question is really about, will improve much. Like this is the worst it will be. Like it will only get better.
Yeah, because it would be harder to be, more problematic than this. There's a Dropbox and a bunch of other document providers that don't really work right now. Another one is, I think, Quip is having issues when you try to open documents from other apps. I think that in theory, iCloud Drive and the fact that you can open documents from other apps is a great feature. It just needs to be a little more reliable and faster, especially faster because every time I try to open a document from iCloud Drive, it takes ages to load for me. And, like you said, it can only get better. So they need to get better faster. Like, I don't want to wait, 4 months as we did for iOS 7 last year. So hopefully Apple will be faster this time. I also forgot to make a point. About the keyboard, Steven.
Okay.
Is that I sometimes actually no. I often prefer to write on the iPad mini, on the iPad in general, I guess, because I feel like I'm more focused on what I'm doing. Whereas when I try to write on the Mac, this may sound crazy to you. All these windows, they bother me at this point because I'm used to open an app. I only see the text. I can mute notifications easily. I don't see the background. I don't see the desktop. I don't see the dock. I only see, the document and text. And, I can just, I'm super, this sounds like one of those productivity blogs. I'm very productive in that way.
Teachy.
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of goes to the next item we have as well of multiple apps at once. And Federico, you say that, and for me, it's really the opposite. Where I'm like, if I'm writing an article, like we'll use that as our sort of common ground example, I'm actually much faster on OS 10 because I can pull in 14. Like when I write, I've got 1,400 Safari tabs open, or I've got a PDF of technical documentation or something. So it's for me the K. Yeah, I just got the Kbase saved all out as text files. It's much I understand the minimalism iPad writing thing, and it is
don't say like that. I don't mean to sound so fancy. I don't like this. I don't like that attitude. It's just I like to see one thing at a time. It's not about minimalism and that sort of lifestyle. My desk is a mess right now. I have a bunch of cups of coffee, and I have a sock on my desk because
it's just
you guys
focus,
told me.
right?
You guys told me to keep a sock on my microphone when I don't use it. So there's a sock right now.
Well, that's so people know that. Never mind. So the question then becomes if we didn't see it last week and we haven't seen it yet, but if side by side iPad apps are a thing, would that would be helpful for me the way that I work? Would it be something that you would avoid using because it would be distracting?
I think it depends. Like, I'm so used to writing in editorial right now and because there's the browser, which is only, you can swipe in editorial and you switch from the text editor to the browser. Right now, I'm very much used to having that kind of workflow in the app. But you're right that, when I use other apps such as Mail and Safari, for instance, or maybe it's Evernote and Safari, I think I would like the ability to see multiple stuff at the same time. I only fear that, on the other hand, it'll add complication to the interface. So right now there's this idea, right, that Apple is going to do split view multitasking. And based on a bunch of rumors, it is going to be the kind of multitasking where you can decide the size of the second app that you show on the screen. So there's like a sidebar mode, which the other app is really narrow by the side of the screen. There's a larger panel mode. But I'm kind of afraid that it'll be... Like, I don't want my iPad to become a computer, in the sense that I don't want to see windows and stuff. So I hope that whatever Apple does, it will not be weird. I hope that if they really do it, I hope that it's simple. And I hope that it's an option, not something that necessarily always happens.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you need to do it if you want it.
Yeah. What about you, Myke?
I think to go back to what you were talking about a bit earlier, Stephen, about multiple apps and stuff like that. What I've started to realize is that as I'm starting to do more business things, I'm starting to realize how much slower I am doing things on iOS. Like, anything that requires a spreadsheet, of which I do not lots, but I frequently do things in spreadsheets. iOS just can't cope with stuff like that. It takes so much longer to do everything. Like, everything. And even like formatting things. Like, if I want to take what's in a Google spreadsheet and I want to copy that and paste it into an email, on the Mac, it retains some of the formatting. On iOS, it just pastes it as text, which is not good in any way. Many things I'm finding recently are harder for me to do on iOS than they are for the Mac, or harder for me to do in a way that I feel gives comparable output quality. I don't feel this to be the inverse, and what I'm finding recently is that I've got this, like, I'll do it later attitude, as in I will do it when I get back to a Mac, as opposed to trying to fight iOS into doing this for me.
Myke, don't you think that the problem may be Google instead of iOS?
No, because I've tried. I tried to use Numbers the other day, and Numbers is not good.
Okay.
Like, for example, I wanted to take. This is a very common thing in a spreadsheet application. I had a column. And I had like 10 rows, and I wanted to take one piece of text and copy it down across all of the rows. In Google Drive and in Google Sheets, for example, you get an extra little selector you can select and pull it down, and it will just copy it the whole way. Couldn't find a way to do it on iOS. If there is a way, I don't know what the way was. Plus, trying to enter lots of information into a number spreadsheet.
It's unpleasant.
It's a nightmare. On iOS, it is just a nightmare. It is actually, all of that stuff is easier to do on Google Sheets, but just the formatting doesn't stay very good. But yeah, then I guess I could maybe copy it into Google. But that's the thing, right? For me to get the output that I want, I may have to use like 3 different applications to try and get that. And
you need a
I agree
workflow.
that text selection and support for rich text are one of the two big things that I hope Apple fixes next year, especially text selection, because it's so weird, especially when you there's a bunch of text related issues in various iOS apps. Like, when you try to select text and the keyboard comes up and like the text flickers, or maybe you lose the selection, or maybe you select some text and you want to scroll under the keyboard and you cannot scroll because everything gets weird. And I think the problem is that different developers are doing different things. But I also think that, the iOS text framework has a few problems. So I hope that next year we'll get different, text selection features. I also wanted to say, however, thanks to extensions and new stuff in iOS 8, like the other day I was waiting in my car and I wanted to do some, I needed to wait like 30 minutes. I was like, I should do some Mac Stories work. So at one point I needed to get the link to an image for a blog post, and I was like, oh no, I cannot do this on the iPad because I cannot view the source code of a web page because the image link was on a web page on Mac Stories. And then I remembered that now there's an extension to do that. So I used the view source extension in Safari. I grabbed the image link. Then I used clips, the widget.
I love clips.
Shift.
I love it.
Yeah,
it's so good.
I use clips to archive a couple of snippets. Then I went to my text editor. I pulled everything back together, and that was really nice because you like sometimes on iOS 8 I get the feeling like I don't remember the new stuff exists, and then I remember and I'm happy. There's probably a German word for this.
I have found that some of these things on iOS 8 is making working on iOS a lot better. Like, for example, like if I wanted to take a tweet and put it into our show notes document, what I used to do was I used to go into Tweetbot, hold, copy the tweet link, go over to the document, paste it, go back to Tweetbot, copy the text of the tweet, go back in, paste it. Now I just hold it, I wait for the share sheet to pop up, I click clips, I select like title and URL, I copy the whole thing, throw it over, and it's one paste. And it's so much faster to do and to have to keep jumping backwards and forwards. Yeah, really. There are little things like that are making it a lot easier, but I agree with you, Federico. About half the time I forget to even look for these things. So it's going to take time to embed this sort of different way of working. But when it does work, it's magical.
Yeah, I guess next year we'll see extension points in the copy and paste menu. I mean, that makes sense, right? Yeah.
So what about real computers? Did anybody buy a Mac Mini?
Nope.
Are you going to?
I don't know. I need to buy an iPad first.
What about you, Myke? You and I were kind of talking in iMessage the other day. Did you end up ordering anything?
I haven't yet, but I plan to. I think that a Mac Mini is going to be a good upgrade for me going forward because I want to move to something that has an SSD in it primarily as a key thing for me. But I'm not 100%. I'm not 100% sure what route that I'm going to go down because I've spoken about my weird little things that I want and don't want. But I think that just an upgraded Mac Mini is going to be the thing that I will go for next.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not looking to buy a new Mac Mini. Mine is now 2 or 3 years old. It's got SSD in it. It's got a bunch of RAM. There's some stuff floating around. There's a link in the show notes. The new Mac Mini is much harder to get into than the old one. You have to use a suction cup. There's security screws. The RAM is soldered to the board. If you do a Fusion drive or an SSD, it's on the board like the MacBook Air. But it's sort of disappointing. I figured that if they did that sort of stuff, the form factor would change, and the form factor didn't change because you can still get a hard drive in almost, if not all of them. And so it's still the same size, but it's much harder to get in and deal with. I think that's a real bummer. The RAM being soldered doesn't save them any space inside. It's still the same size. Clearly, they're doing it to simplify and maybe with an eye towards the future of shrinking the Mac Mini. But especially that $499 machine, it's not a great machine. It's a 1.4 gig CPU, not a ton of RAM, a slow hard drive, which is a major pain to replace on the Mac Mini now with those security screws. And so it's a little disappointing as someone who likes to tinker with things. But I understand that I'm a dinosaur and the way the future is, sealed machines. We did have a question. Someone was like, well, what machines can you upgrade RAM in? And now it's only the 27-inch iMac, the 27-inch iMac with Retina display, and the Mac Pro. Everything else has RAM soldered to the board. And so if you're buying a new machine, like, save up the extra $200 and like max out the RAM if you want to keep it, because you can't circle back a couple years later and increase the amount of memory. That's my soapbox for the day.
I think you're just gonna have to get used to it. I'm afraid, buddy. This is the world we live in now, right?
Oh yeah, that's what I say. Like, I understand, like, this is the way that it is, but like a 499 Mac Mini only comes with 4 gigs of RAM is sort of insane. Like, it's not. It's kind of in line with like 16 gigabyte iPad and iPhones. It's just not a good experience for people who want to buy the base model. And I get that Apple's trying to push people up the chain, and we're going to talk about that when we get to the iPad. But it's like really like 4 gigs of RAM and a 500 gig slow hard drive. Like, I understand the Mac Mini only costs $500, but that's not awesome at all. Anyways.
Last piece of follow-up. I received my case finally.
The blue one?
The blue one. And I love it. I love having a big, bright blue iPhone. It's just a nice thing to have. I feel like I have the Lumia phone I always wanted.
Oh.
Because it's nice and soft to the touch, and it's bright blue. And like, it's not as grippy as the Spigen case that I had previously, but it's grippy enough, but it just looks really great and it feels really great. Yeah. And I'm very happy, and I have a nice Apple logo on the back.
And as I said, the Apple logo is embossed in the back of it.
So you can't be wrong about it.
I've taken mine out of the case because Federico told me to live life.
Right.
And I've been living life for a week now, and my phone is still in one piece. So we'll see how next week goes.
Have you been enjoying life more, Steven?
Cool.
I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into answering that question, but I would say sure.
Wow, that's quite big. I think we need to call Apple, because we've got some problems here that we need to address. Clearly, people's lives are improved if they stop selling these cases. Although I would say that my life has improved since I got my case. So.
You should. You're looking up. You're on the sunny side of life. Okay.
Let's take a quick break to thank our first sponsor this week, and that is our friends over at lynda.com. Lynda.com is an easy and affordable way to help individuals and organizations learn. You can instantly stream thousands of courses created by experts on software, web development, graphic design, and so much more. Lynda.com makes sure that they work with experts, not just experts in the software and the hardware and the tools and the tips and the tricks that they're going to teach you, but also experts that are able to produce this content at the very highest quality. They use people that know what they're talking about, and they use people that know how to create it in a fantastic and beautiful way. All of Lynda's courses are broken down into bite-sized pieces, so you're able to learn at your own pace from start to finish, back to front, or you can jump in and just find a quick answer. They make this even easier with their tools like searchable transcripts that allow you to go in and check something a little later on. Maybe you want to go and find out, what did that guy say about how to adjust the exposure settings in the photography course that I watched? Well, you can go in and do that. Maybe you want to learn, when I say you can learn at your own pace, maybe you want to set up a playlist for yourself and you want to learn this course one day and this course the next day, and set out your own little course syllabus where you can do that. And you can also learn on the go with their apps for iPhone, iPad, and Android. I think that lynda.com is awesome for everyone, beginner or advanced. They have courses for you, and that's really good because you can kind of pick the type of thing that you want to learn more about, and you can start at any stage. They don't just make beginners courses, they don't make just experts courses, they make all of them in between. They have great overview courses, they have courses that dive in deep on a certain topic of a subject. It's really cool. Lynda.com has over 100,000 video tutorials, and they have one low monthly price of $25 to give you access to them, unlimited access. I want to highlight some of the types of things that I've found whilst looking through Lynda this week. Maybe you want to learn some web design stuff. They have courses in every language available: HTML, CSS, Drupal, jQuery, Node.js, you name it, they have it. They can even help you learn how to make your site responsive and be like one of the cool kids. Maybe you want to learn about how to write an iBooks author book. They have courses about getting to grips with the tools, but also showing you how you could create specific books for use in the classroom, if that's the kind of thing that you want. You know, you could create like an English lesson guide or something and distribute it to your students. Or maybe you want to pick up a new hobby. Maybe photography is the new thing for you. They can help you out with all the practical things like lighting and how to snap that perfect portrait, but they can also teach you skills in all of the major photography apps like Lightroom, Aperture, Photoshop, and so much more. We've worked out a great deal with Lynda.com to provide you with a special offer to access all of their courses for free for 7 days. Visit lynda.com/connected, that's lynda.com/connected, and sign up right now, and also help support this show. Thank you so much to Lynda for their support of this show and Relay FM.
So we had a question from listener Josh, who kind of wanted to know what services and apps we were using for email. And we addressed this like a year ago on the old show, but I thought it'd be worth revisiting. So I guess I'll go first. I'm all iCloud for personal stuff with the iOS and OS X mail app. Relay in 512 is those email accounts are hosted at Fastmail, which if you're looking for a mail service, Fastmail is really great. And the day job is Google Apps, which I use in the Gmail app for iOS and MailPlane for OS X. So work is separate. I can turn it off on the weekends and still get all my personal and side email through the built-in app.
I'm still on Rackspace email for all my Mac Stories email. We have like 6 or 7 mailboxes for the team. And I'm using Apple Mail on OS X, also Mail on the iPad, because I couldn't find a great third-party client for the iPad yet. And on the iPhone, I'm using the awesome, fantastic, excellent Dispatch from the same guys behind Clips. And for personal stuff, I'm using iCloud. I still have a legacy Gmail account, but I don't use it for anything. In fact, my Gmail account, my Google account is only for authentication with Google services like Google Analytics and YouTube. I don't use Gmail for anything. I'm very happy with Rackspace Mail. IMAP can be a little slow, like with search and moving like a bunch of messages together to another mailbox. But overall, it's been very, very solid. And I'm especially happy about the new Dispatch update for iOS 8. But I guess we talk about this later in the show. Is that the plan?
Is that the plan?
Okay.
Is there a plan anymore? Who knows?
Who knows?
I think there is a plan. There's always a master plan.
That's right. It's not accidental. Myke, what about you?
I'm so unhappy with email right now. Like, I'm just so sad about the apps that I'm using. Nothing. I can't find anything that I'm happy with. I use Apple Mail on iOS because there's no iOS app that I've found that really meets my needs, except Mailbox. I loved Mailbox, but I can't use it because we use Fastmail. So we use IMAP. We need IMAP, and Mailbox doesn't support that. Dispatch is good, but search is like just basically non-existent, or at least it was for me. It like just never worked properly. But I'm thinking about trying it out again, and I've got it downloaded. I also downloaded the new Boxer update for iOS. They just released version 5, and I want to try that out again. I've seen some praise of it, so I want to give that another go. Maybe one of them will be able to cure my woes on iOS. It's one of my main problems with iOS Mail at the moment is like the lack of extension support and stuff. So it's just frustrating me.
Yeah,
because I can't work it out. And also I want to be able to open my links in Chrome. because that's my web browser of choice on the phone, and so I don't get to do that. But I use a combination of Fastmail, iCloud, and Gmail. Different apps, different reasons. And on the Mac, I've been using Airmail, and Airmail has gotten so bad, so fast. Airmail 2 is making me want to cry.
I've never been a fan of Airmail. It's clunky, and it can be very CPU and memory intensive.
The new Airmail 2 is extremely CPU intensive, and it's basically the animations are so slow, and everything kind of works weirdly.
Yeah,
for me
I use Mailplane for Google Apps because it's like Gmail and a wrapper, so you get your local contacts and stuff, and it's fine. Everyone I work with uses Airmail, and everyone loves it but me.
I did love it, but this new version I'm not getting on board with. Feels a little bit rushed. But I can't use Mail.app for one specific reason. I cannot stand that if a message is previewed, it marks it as read. Like, I just cannot understand the logic of that, and I don't know why I'm not able to stop it doing that. And I can't live like that. I can't live like that. It's like I'm living like an animal or something. Just because I just don't want all my emails to be marked as read automatically. I like to action them and then they become marked as read, which is the main reason I use Airmail. I was a big sort of defendant of the first Airmail, like Airmail 1, but Airmail 2, I'm having a bunch of problems with it. But I think just in general, I'm having problems with Yosemite, so maybe Yosemite is the problem. But yeah, that's what I'm using. But basically, my story is just a story of woe.
Maybe Google Inbox can solve your woe.
Yeah, so this is interesting, right? This just floated by today. I don't think it's going to be able to solve it because it's probably going to be Gmail only.
I'm sure it is because they're doing all the stuff Google now does of like looking in your email for ticket information and pictures and.
Well, Stephen, funny you should say that. There was some news that came out earlier this week. There have been some leaked screenshots of the Gmail app for Android allowing you to sign up with Outlook and Yahoo Mail email addresses into the official Gmail app. Clearly, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case, it's in Google's interest to just have all of your email just flow through Gmail.
Oh, sure. But like, Inbox doesn't even work with Google Apps yet, which is crazy.
Yeah, but it's in beta, right?
Yeah, it's invite only beta. Like,
but the invite is you send an email. It's so weird. Like you send an email to inbox@gmail.com, and then it emails you back, and it's like, yeah, okay, thanks, buddy. It's very strange. I don't.
Also, if you use it in the browser, is Chrome only, which is a whole tangent that Google is actually doing bad things to the internet and splitting up.
Go Chrome forever.
God, no.
Why would you ever say that, Myke?
I love Chrome.
I don't hate Chrome. It destroys your battery on a laptop, but like the internet should be the same regardless of what browser you use. And Google, when they are splitting Chrome away from WebKit, it's like Internet Explorer used to be. Like you already have to do some things just for Chrome in development, and it's only going to become more ridiculous. Chrome.
In all honesty, I do think that is dumb. Like that is just dumb.
It's bad for the internet.
Yeah, it is. It's Internet Explorer level of bad.
Yeah, and not because like Internet Explorer is bad because they were behind the times, and they still are. Like it's crazy pants what you have to build around for Internet Explorer, but like Chrome is like a superset on top of WebKit now, and so you're gonna have things that you can only do in Chrome that like just don't work in Safari, or let alone whatever's going on at Firefox and Internet Explorer.
Like I totally get optimizing for your own browser that you make. Like optimize for Chrome. Like I think that is more than acceptable, but don't require it. Like that's just a dumb move. Like it's just not good. It's because all the iCloud stuff works better in Safari and all the Google stuff works better in Chrome, but you can use them both.
Oh, Google Drive was unusable in Safari 6. It's better in Safari 7 on Yosemite, but it was just unusable. And Google didn't care, and apparently Apple either probably didn't care or couldn't fix it. It's like makes me angry. We should talk about the event.
So what do you want to talk about, though?
So, well, it's just like day of the soapbox. So a lot of people have been hard on the event for being dull. Like Federico said it before he got started of like, oh, it was just recap. But like people have such short memories. Like that's what most Apple events are. Most Apple events are, this is where we've been, like WWDC keynotes like this. The first half hour is like, this is how many things we sold, and like, this is how awesome the store is, and look at our market share of upgrades, and like, yes, like the iPad Air 2 is exciting. The iMac is exciting. Yes, the iPad Mini is not exciting. The Mac Mini is not exciting, except for me. But to say that it's like a dull, boring keynote, like I get it, but in context, I don't think that's a fair assessment. And not like, oh, stop picking on Apple. Like, I don't care about that. But I think that like this is how these events go with Apple and other companies, right? Like, they have to lay the groundwork of this is what we're up to, and they have to re-show Yosemite and iOS 8 because not everybody watched the WWDC keynote. Like, it might be a little boring for us because we've all been running Yosemite forever. But for the media who's going to like put these stories out into the world, they have to recap this stuff. And I think that's completely fair. And I think that like the idea of, I was like a big letdown, like I just don't see it. This is how Apple events normally go. Last month, obviously, was a unique thing. I think in 5 years, we're going to recut the Apple Watch event like we've done the iPhone and iPod because it's going to be historical. Not every Apple event, most Apple events are not.
I think I was just hoping for more than one iPad and the Retina Mac, though. Like, that was kind of what we got.
But like, they can't deliver like all new things all the time.
Yeah, but like you know, even
the reviews of like the iPad are like, oh, like it's not much better than the iPad Air. We're like, people don't go from iPad Air to iPad Air 2 unless they're insane or Federico, and like they can't turn over the whole thing every time. And so it's about what is going to be updated this year, and like there are cycles of these things.
Yeah, but like last week we were talking about how we would love to see some new software from Apple or some software enhancements to the iPad, and we didn't get any of that. So
but who put that idea into your head? Like, Apple never promised that. Like,
I put the idea into his head.
Yeah,
Federico's to blame.
Federico's to blame. And I mean, I get it. Like, I understand, and I too wanted those things. Like, I think multitasking on the iPad kind of sucks, and it'd be really cool to see some new things there. I think it's very limiting, but like, I think at the same time, like, we want to get ahead of where Apple is, and like, yes, there's like lots of indications in iOS 8 that side-by-side apps are happening, but it's their timetable, not ours.
Go for it, Teach.
I don't know. I mean, is it really getting ahead of ourselves? It's been like, 3 years since Apple released a brand new popular app for the iPad that's not like an adaptation of an iPhone app.
I mean, like GarageBand, iPhoto stuff? Like,
yeah. I mean, it's... And then we have...
all their software titles are on the iPad. Like, what are they going to announce?
Make a new software title.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's exactly what Apple needs to do.
Or, professional stuff like Logic or like, what's the other one? Final Cut. I mean, the last iPad apps, like the really new iPad apps that we've been getting from Apple are, I think, the Apple Store app, Logic Remote, and, Airport Utility, maybe.
Hey, that's helpful.
Yeah, I mean, if that's exciting for you, I don't know. I'm just saying, now we have this new iPad Air 2, which is really... awesome. It has a faster processor. It's got 3 cores and it's got 2 gigs of RAM.
Hooray!
And we can run Pages in it, which is fine if you use Pages. It's just that we have this super special hardware, which is, I think it's probably faster than my MacBook Air. Only my MacBook Air can run, a lot of professional software. My iPad can also run professional software, but it feels like Steve Jobs said, it feels like baby software in a way. And it's just that the advancement of Apple software doesn't match the advancements on the hardware perspective. And it feels like Apple talks a lot about collaboration between their teams, but it feels like the hardware team is going faster than the software team, probably because the software team has been busy, doing redesigns and fixing bugs. Still,
that's the counter argument of last week of like, they're moving too quickly, they have too many things, annual releases are bad. Like, I don't disagree with you. Like, I think the iPad is underserved by iOS 8 and iOS 8 apps. Like, I think it could do a lot more, and more or less you can do what you could do on an iPad 5 years ago. Like, I'm on board with that idea. Totally. I don't want to portray the thought that I'm not. I just think that's like, that comes with costs, and right now Apple's burning the candle at both ends on software, and so it's just not happening.
It would have been nice to see, Apple doing stuff with their new software features on iOS 8. It would have been nice to see Apple saying, hey, we made these, extensions, for instance, and now we're doing extensions ourselves. Instead, they demoed, they spent like 30 minutes doing a demo call with Stephen Colbert, and they did all these, funny, unfunny skits. And
the handshake was pretty funny.
Yeah, that one was pretty nice.
Yeah.
So instead, it would have been nice to see, another, maybe like Steve Jobs did. I'm not saying there should be another Steve Jobs. I'm just saying there should be another kind of iPad event saying there's a story behind the iPad. You can use it for work. You can use it for entertainment or whatever. And, here's the demos, here's the software, here's how developers can take advantage of it. And instead they just say it's thinner, it's lighter, and it's got a better camera. And yeah, that's it. Now, I'm not saying that it's not a great iPad. In fact, I cannot wait to get one. It's just that it doesn't really paint a story for the iPad. And maybe we need to wait until next year for that, hopefully.
Yeah, and kind of in hand with that, I think one reason people thought the event was underwhelming, I think, is solely at the feet of the iPad Mini. The iPad Mini 3 is the same as the reconned iPad Mini 2, which is the iPad Mini with Retina display, with Touch ID, which, like, I really like Touch ID, but if I were to buy an iPad Mini today, I would go iPad Mini 2 almost for sure. And they kept, people in the chat room were talking about, there's like a bajillion iPad SKUs now, where they kept the original iPad Mini, which is functionally the iPad Mini or the iPad 2, and they kept the old iPad Air around. So now there's 5 different models of iPad, each with a bunch of different sizes and colors, and there's a lot of iPads.
Can you imagine using an original iPad Mini like every day now?
No.
I can tell you, it's not funny. It's not really pleasant at all. I tried a couple of weeks ago. Because I needed to sell that iPad, right? And so I installed iOS 8, and I tried to use it.
Not good.
Yeah, it was kind of terrible. Yeah.
Yeah, and like if they keep selling it, like, do they have to support iOS 9? Like, I hope not. And like I would have been okay if they kept the iPad Mini without the Retina display and bumped it to an A6. But like the A5 processor just won't die, and maybe they only made so many A6 because like there's no A6 devices anymore. But it's crazy, and like I understand from a business perspective, like Apple is trying to spread out the pricing where like if you want to spend just a couple $100, you can get an iPad Mini, and you can work your way up, and they're always tempting you like, hey, a little bit more, you get a Retina display, a little bit more, you get Touch ID. But yeah, the iPad Mini, the original still being for sale, is it's just crazy. Last week on ATP they were talking about this, and John Siracusa made a really good point of like, why can't Apple could make a $249 iPad that wasn't 3 years old, but instead they just move them further down the line to make them cheaper. And it's like, what if you did a iPhone 5C style iPad where it's like, yeah, it's like an A6 and it's got a plastic shell, and like it's lower cost, but no, they keep the old stuff around, and like the 16 gigs of RAM or 16 gigs of storage, and like the 4 gigs of RAM on the Mac Mini, like it's a bad user experience. Like people are drawn to the cheapest device, and people who are only going to spend $250 on an iPad Mini are probably the same type of person who are not going to be like upsold to an iPad Mini 2 or 3. And they're going to have a bad time because, like you said, it's bad on iOS 8. The screen is gross. I think Apple's playing this game of like when you get into the low end market. I think they're hurting themselves long term by doing that with a old device.
There seems to be like an element of panic and desperation are not the right words, but they're the only words that I can come into my mind. So like you've got this spread of iPad models. Then you've got Tim Cook on stage saying about how the iPad has sold more in its first 5 years than any other product, I think.
Which is a super weird stat. Like
it's a fake stat. I mean, it's real, but you're
no
using
one thinks
it.
about that. Yeah.
You've found a statistic. You have found a statistic that
the
sounds
iPad looks
good.
in. Yeah.
Because because Apple of 5 years ago to today is very different to Apple previously.
Yeah.
So any product that Apple releases now, new category, should always sell that quickly. And then you've got, like in the earnings call, we found out that the Mac had sold more than the iPad in the last quarter.
Yeah,
which is
a
like weird statistic.
Yeah, and like we spoke about last week with like post PC devices, the Mac is in a sinking demographic. Like desktop and laptop computers are like, that's a fading part of the market, and the fact that Mac beat the iPad despite that is troubling. And like I wrote the other night, like I think Apple with the 2014 holiday iPad lineup, like I think they're experimenting. I think they want to see which ones do better, because at one end they're trying to raise the average selling price, which I think is why the iPad Mini 3 is what it is. Like, okay, if you want the best iPad, you get the bigger one that's more expensive. But on the other hand, like they're trying to go downstream and do cheaper ones. And so like I just don't know what they're doing. And the only conclusion I can come to is that they're not sure exactly quite yet how the iPad looks long term. Tim Cook even said that on the call, where like people upgrade these things differently than iPhones, and we're figuring that out. And so if you're from an iPad 3 or 4, like my wife has the iPad 4, which I apologize for every time I pick it up.
Really?
Like the iPad
4?
Yeah.
Stephen bought the one of them.
The mythical iPad 4. It's like legendary.
It's
I never
the
saw
iPad 3. It's the iPad 3 with a lightning connector. I'm probably going to give her my Air here pretty soon. It's like the iPad 2 is great, but year to year, like the iPad 2 is very impressive. But as an iPad Air owner, I'm not tempted by it. And so I think Apple's just figuring this out, and it's weird. They're thinking out loud with this in a way that you don't see Apple do this very often, where they're like, clearly there's competing ideas, so we're just going to push it all into the market and like see what happens. Not the way Apple works, but I can't get over the fact that I think that's what's going on here.
Okay, so I'm gonna share my opinion. It may not be popular with you guys, but still, I think that the iPad will be fine eventually, because the problem that I see is that, like you said, Steven, that Apple's timing has been weird. Like they prioritized certain features and revisions, or multiple versions available on the market that I don't quite understand. Like, why is Touch ID coming to the iPad only this year? Or why do we have 3 iPad minis around? Or why don't we have more apps by Apple made for the iPad? The timing has been weird, but I honestly believe that the iPad will be fine. And I don't tend to believe, what CEOs say during earnings calls or that kind of statements, But when Tim Cook said that the iPad is only going through like a speed bump, I think that's pretty accurate.
I mean, maybe. Or it is that the iPad had really explosive growth at the beginning, and now it's settling into what it will always be. Like, I don't think the iPad is ever going to be
bigger than the Mac.
Well, I don't think it's going to like get worse sales wise. I think it's going to level off about where the Mac is, again, because people don't upgrade these things every year. And it's a tablet the tablet market in of itself is just a lot smaller than smartphones.
Well, how big is the PC market?
Not shrinking. I mean, the PC market's huge. Like, the PC market is insane, but the PC market is not like, people aren't moving to tablets en masse. There are people who do, including yourself, but I think that the average user is not trading out their Dell desktop for an iPad.
Well, I think that's the goal for Apple, right?
Sure.
To go
Yeah,
after
that's what they want.
every PC user. So how do they do that? That's the question. That's why I think that the timing for some stuff has been weird.
I think you got to just put Flash on it.
I think that they need to do it, and this is like an impossible thing. They need to do it by driving the overall price down, but keeping the quality high, like, which is a relatively impossible thing to do. But I think that you're only going to see that growth if it's more attractive to upgrade every year or every 2 years, because people will hold on to these things, as you say, Stephen, for a longer period of time, longer than a phone, because nobody's subsidizing them. And nobody wants another contract. I mean, you can get iPads on contracts from networks, but nobody wants that, because who wants a second contract?
Yeah.
But I think that's the problem. Federico, I have a question for you. It's kind of unrelated, but I'm interested to know your take on it. Do you think that it was a bad idea last year for Apple to put all of that power into the iPad Mini?
Why would it be a bad idea?
Because now this year we're upset that they haven't upgraded the processor.
Yeah.
So do you think that in hindsight, like, if they would have just bumped it a little bit, or then maybe we wouldn't be so frustrated about it this year? Because last year it was kind of like, why have they put this?
It's
like
the curse of
same?
the A6. The A6 just can't exist in an iPad Mini.
Oh yeah,
They just skip right over it.
Yeah, I think the question isn't whether Apple should have gone easier with the iPad Mini last year. Is why the question is, why are they doing this? With the iPad Mini 3. I mean, last year they needed to put the Retina display on the iPad Mini. That's for sure, and they couldn't have gone with the slower processor, because that wouldn't been a problem with the higher res display. So they needed to go with the variation of the A7. The problem is this year. Why is it impossible for Apple to do the same strategy as last year with the iPad Mini 3? So what I've been thinking about this. So either it's a political decision, so we want to push the iPad Air 2 because we believe that the people want the bigger size iPad, and then we're going to do the iPad Pro, and the iPad Mini will slowly die, or at least stay as the underpowered iPad that costs a little less money. Or the problem is technical. We cannot put the anti-reflective stuff. We cannot put the new processor into the iPad Mini this year, so we're gonna be weird this year, and maybe next year we'll fix it. I don't know. See, that's the thing. We're doing a show about these problems, and we don't know the real answer. We can only speculate. I think that last year was amazing for the iPad Mini. Like, in retrospective, I think we'll remember the first gen Retina iPad Mini as, fantastic device. The way that we remember, I don't know, like the iPod what was the popular one, like the Mini, the Nano. Yeah. What's the name? We even did a show about this. I think we'll remember the second gen iPad Mini as a breakthrough for Apple. The iPad Mini 3, I want to believe that it will go down in history like the iPad 4. Like, it's so weird. Like, why does it exist?
Yeah.
No, I don't think last year was a mistake, Myke.
I think what we're going to see is the processors trickle down now. So next year, the Mini will get the A8.
8X.
And I think that's how it will go on. I think that there was either a technical thing with the A6 or the Mini required an A7 to power the Retina display, and it was kind of like, we need to make a decision. We can't not have the Retina display, so let's level them out. Yeah, and then from now it will fall into the iPad Air as the top of the line iPad. Then there's two different, then there's the iPad Mini, and there's two different models of each or whatever.
And there's some weirdness around the processors too. The A7 was the same everywhere, as far as we know. The Retina or the iPad 2 has an A8X, not the regular A8 that the phones have. And so assumedly the iPad mini would also need the A8X to handle the display. And so is there an issue there with whatever the difference is between the A8 and the 8X? Early testing shows it has a third core. Was that the issue? But the iPad mini 2 and iPad mini 3 have to have slightly different processors anyways, because they're using Touch ID, which has the security stuff that the old iPad didn't. So like, was that always there in the iPad mini? They just added the Touch ID button, or did they rework the iPad mini 3 in some way that's minor? But I think Federico's absolutely right. We're really not going to know for a year what's going on. Is the iPad mini going to go back to being the little brother, or is it going to be that, hey, 2014 was kind of weird for reasons we don't ever really know, and they'll be back on track? Or Apple's just experimenting. Like, the iPad mini was a huge success. The average selling price of the iPad dipped. The first quarter of the iPad mini was for sale. It's a very popular product. And so is Apple looking at maybe the reasons it is so popular? Is it the size? Is it that it's the same power as the big one? Or what are those factors? So I think today we really can't say for sure what's going on until there's a few more dots on that line.
So let's talk about purchasing. So, I mean, I've stuck by how I felt, and I've not even considered a new iPad. Stephen, are you standing by your guns, or have you bought an iPad Air yet?
I have not bought anything. We spoke about this last week. I bought an iPad Air a year ago, and it's in my review of the iPad Air that I bought. I went to the bigger screen because the keyboard was better, with the idea that I would write on the iPad. And I honestly don't write on the iPad very much. It's basically a consumption device for me. And so I've sort of thought about picking up a iPad Mini 2, just to go smaller again, because I like that form factor. I just hated the keyboard. But I don't know what I'm going to do. So I also have like an original iPad mini floating around at the house. I have an iPad 4 that I need to replace for my wife because it's just like carrying around a bag of sand. So I don't know. I'll keep you guys, I'll keep you posted on what I do.
Federico,
what are you doing about your consumption device?
What I'm doing about my creation device is that I'm going with the iPad Air, man. I mean, I have to, right? What if Apple does some new software feature just for the iPad Air 2 because it's got more RAM and because it's got a faster processor?
You're going back full size.
Yeah.
Wow.
I need to go bigger this year. And
go big or go home, Teach.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna miss my iPad mini friend, I'm saying goodbye this week.
You could keep both.
We're having like a ceremony. No, I don't want to do, all the, how I'm using. I don't want to pull a Dave Morin, I just want an iPad.
Yeah. Day iPad, night iPad.
No, not really. That's a lot of money also. I want to try the latest and greatest features, so to essentially future-proof my iPad experience, and also because I've been talking about not using a Mac like for real this time, and so a bigger screen. Maybe I'm growing older, my eyesight is getting worse.
Like
23. So maybe I'm becoming in a way an Italian Steven. I need bigger displays and stuff. So
I actually have an eye appointment next week. That's sad.
See. So I'm going with the new Air because primarily because I want to make sure that if Apple does, multitasking is only for the iPad Air 2. I don't think it's gonna happen, but you never know. So yeah, I'm getting Space Gray 64, Wi-Fi and 4G. I'm about to drop my cash to the Apple Store.
Yeah, gold, right? You going gold?
No, Space Gray, not gold.
Yeah, you're going to go gold, right? Gold
no,
128.
No.
Gold 128 Wi-Fi, yeah? That's what you got.
Space Gray is definitely the way to go.
I'm a little skeptical about my choice for the smart cover. I wanted to go, standard black cover. I'm thinking about like doing like Myke does, just picking a random color and going with it.
No colors are random. They're picked go bright. I'm
Oh,
thinking
yeah?
about getting one of the lime green cases for my,
Of
for
I,
my
course.
I
6
say
Plus.
that. I was with Myke when he bought his iPad. Was it your iPad 3 you bought here in Memphis?
Yeah.
And you were guilted into buying the Apple Red leather
Yeah.
smart cover by the Apple Store guy.
I didn't even want the red one. I wanted like a green one or a blue one. And he was like,
And he was like, "No, this one helps AIDS." And
I was
you
There's
bought
probably a Casey-less way to refer to these iPads and covers when you put them together. Like if you pick a green cover or a yellow cover, is that a Lemonapad Mini?
it. Yeah,
or something?
probably.
Well, you gotta believe that the guy has multiple, nicknames for Apple devices.
Mhm. World's greatest nicknames.
on that note, let me tell you about my friends at Hover. Hover is the best way to buy and manage domain names. It's been my place of choice for so long, I couldn't think about going anywhere else to buy a domain name these days. If I want a domain name, hover.com is where I go. When it comes to starting a new project, naming is like the hardest thing. I've been listening to this new podcast called Startup, and on it they're talking about naming, how they name their podcast company that they're working on creating. And it reminded me of when me and Stephen were trying to think up names for Relay FM.
It was bad.
I say think up when we were arguing for about 2 weeks about names. And I had two things that I would do to check on a name. I would ask Stephen if he thought it was a good idea, and then I would search for it on Hover. Because if you can't get the domain name you want, then you may as well go back to the drawing board again. And Hover makes it so easy to check this stuff. You can go in, type some keywords, or just type the words that you're looking for. It's going to show you all of the TLDs that are available, and it's going to make you be able to purchase them super easy, super quick. You're not bugged with 1,000 screens to try and get through. They just want to make sure, and Hover really do. Like when I spoke to Hover, they was like, tell people that one of the reasons we do this is because we know that people come to us like at the last moment. So we want to be able to get them out and on their way and onto their projects as soon as they can be. And I love that idea. They Hover are like a great supporter of creative stuff. They're always doing things like pledging to Kickstarters and things like that, and obviously they help support podcasts because they know like that their place is to help people, but people are coming to them at the last stage when they're at their last moment and they want to get out there and get their website or their project into the world. Hover have all of the TLDs that you expect. They have .com, .co, .me, .sexy, .coffee, all the ones that you expect to see at a domain registrar these days. They have great prices. Their .coms are $12.99. They include free Whois privacy. They believe your private information should stay private. You shouldn't have to pay for that. You simply should not have to pay to keep your home address off of the internet. Like, you just shouldn't have to pay for that. And Hover give you that for free. They have fantastic customer support. They're renowned for this. They have a no hold, no wait, no transfer telephone support policy. You'll talk to somebody and you'll talk to that one person and they will be able to help you with what you need. But if you prefer to do email stuff, they have great email support. I've used that a bunch. They have volume discounts for bulk domain renewals. So if you have like 1,000 domain names like I do, you can just get a better price by renewing them all at the same time. They can help you out with email stuff, like they can help you out with email addresses and storage and forwarding, and so much more. So go to hover.com and try them out. I know that you're going to be satisfied. And you can get 10% off your first purchase at hover.com if you use the code OldSteven, all one word.
With a PH?
With a PH, of course. We're talking about you. So if you use the code OldSteven at checkout, not only will you be showing your support for Relay FM, you'll also be showing hover.com that you love us. Thank you so much to Hover for sponsoring this episode of Connected.
That code is excellent. I didn't know that was the code until just now. That's pretty good. So, OS 10, 10.10 Yosemite. It's here.
Do we really have to?
No, we're not going to do that again. OS 10 Yosemite is here. What do you guys think? What about you, Federico? Let's start with you.
Okay. So, yeah, I don't know what to think, honestly. I mean, the new design is fine, I think. I don't get, probably because I'm not a designer, I don't get all the designer criticism that the OS is getting, like, oh, this font size is especially wrong. I don't understand. Like the ligatures are all wrong. I don't get it. I don't understand. Like there's a new font. Okay, fine. Honestly, I'm not trolling or anything. It looks fine. Some parts look weird. Some parts look okay. Others are really nice. Like the new dock is really nice. Notification center is really nice. What else? The new Finder. There's a. I like that you can use the preview pane in any view. I never use the new mail features for iCloud drop. No, mail drop. I think it's called for attachments.
Someone tried to send me an attachment by that today and it failed.
Yeah, I never used that. What else? I like widgets. Is that even a question? I like widgets. Like I keep
dashboard
two of them.
widgets.
No, Steven, the modern era widgets.
Yeah, I don't know why dashboard is still a thing.
I like extensions, especially in Safari, because they bring up little sheets that are consistent with the Twitter and Facebook sheets. So that's nice.
The Tumblr one is pretty great.
Yeah, I have the Todoist one, and I tried the Wunderlist, a couple of others. That's nice. iTunes is a mess. Honestly, I don't understand how Apple manages to make iTunes more difficult every year. They must have some kind of, strategy to move stuff around and just make it a puzzle for people. So that's really not okay with me. Messages is fine. It still has all the issues with, doing group chats, using your phone address or email address, and then you get split threads. I know that you guys, we tried many times to have a group chat without having multiple threads on messages for the Mac.
I've never seen anybody else complain about this other than us.
It
I don't
must
know
be
if
us.
it's a thing or if it's just us.
It was a thing with the Mac Stories team also, so it's probably me at this point.
One thing I've done is I've turned off iMessage to my email addresses. It is only my phone number now because
That's a good idea. Yeah.
Because my personal email is super easy to guess and like not really all that private anymore. And so my phone number is, and I figure if I'm texting with somebody, like it's fine if they have my phone number, and that has helped because what happens is when iMessage threads split, it goes to alternative contact information for somebody. So say the three of us are all using our phone numbers, it splits, and all of a sudden Myke is texting from his email address, sometimes for no apparent reason. And so I'm hoping that cuts it down, for me at least, anything that I'm causing into the world. But
Can I finish with the controversial
please.
opinions?
Yes, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to jump in. Please.
No, I know. It is still OS 10, It's not like a major change. I mean, there's a new...
The bones are the same.
Yeah, there's a new design. There's the things are a little flatter, and there's a transparencies all over the place. But it is still OS 10, The buttons are still in the same place mostly. It's just a different style, right? I don't think that OS 10... it's not changed, right? It's still the same operating system. And I think that I don't see how it can fundamentally change at this point. Like OS 10 is here to stay and there's going to be different features, but I don't think that Apple is, changing how people put files on their desktop. It is still the same structure, and maybe the structure is going to stay. There's the new stuff with, iOS integration with continuity and handoff.
Which is cool when it works.
It's cool when it works. See, getting phone calls on my Mac, that's really nice. Getting...
I love it.
Text, yeah, same. Getting text messages to propagate across every device is really nice. Especially when you use like two-factor authentication. You get the verification code on your Mac, which is nice. Handoff, I don't really get. Like, I get the idea. It is cool. It makes for a cool demo. But it just, in practical, everyday usage, when I'm doing something on my iPhone, I finish it on my iPhone. When I'm starting an email on the iPad, I usually finish it on the iPad. And same with the Mac. If I start a document on the Mac, I don't want to carry that over to, with a handoff gesture to the phone. Maybe it's just me, but I get why a lot of people are excited about Yosemite because they use OS 10 a lot. So to conclude, I'm sorry if this took too long. I guess I'm not excited by it because I just don't use it anymore several hours every day. So
I do. I mean, it's not news to anybody who listens that I consider myself
a Mac power
first.
user.
Yes. I think it's a podcast. Never been on it. So you guys have.
Haven't yet.
Yeah. I can't believe you beat me to it. If you're listening, Mac power users, you are my white whale.
The Myke power user.
Oh, God.
Yeah, you're a Mac power user.
That should be a show.
It already is.
I think it's this show. So I consider myself Mac first. I consider myself, I'm in the upper tier of Mac users. And I agree with you completely, Federico, that OS 10 is still OS 10, right? Like, things still work the same way. It still feels the same. This is my test, right? If you sat somebody in front of like 10.0, 10.1, 10.2, could they use Yosemite? And the answer, of course, is yes. Like, it looks different. Actually, in some ways, Yosemite looks much more like OS 10.0, 10.1. It's the same OS, right? They've been refining it. They've been polishing it. I think Yosemite is a little weird because, like, if you draw a line through the versions of OS 10 and how they look, which I did back in April on 5.12, looking at how Aqua has evolved. Yosemite is a natural evolution for OS 10. It's just skipped over several middle steps, and they didn't go all iOS 7 on it. Like it looks like OS 10 and iOS merged and combined their UI elements. What my problem is, and what I wrote about in my UI review, is that there are some serious trade-offs in Yosemite with the design that I think really hurt usability in places. So my favorite thing, maybe ever, and by favorite I mean least favorite ever, is there's a screenshot in my review about halfway down of mail.app sitting in front of Safari with CNN loaded. And so you get this like crazy red background in the Mail app, but only in parts of the Mail app because not even all of it's translucent the same way. And it's like that's translucency and like the idea that content like slides below the window UI and like you get this really nice vibrancy to see what's back there. That's really nice on iOS, and it works on iOS because it's one app at a time. But the second you have overlapping windows, you run into all sorts of weird issues. And in this Mail example, the problem is that all of a sudden parts of my UI are bright red, and bright red seems bad. And it's only because because of the background. Craig Federici got on stage and said, look, like with Yosemite, like your desktop wallpaper gives your computer personality, right? So I use a very dark wallpaper on my Mac, and so like my Finder windows are darker, and my dock is darker, and like, but if I make it like some crazy rainbow color, then my computer feels more vibrant and bright and happy, and like that's great, but it doesn't work because it leads to all sorts of readability and legibility issues. It leads to all sorts of like these weird edge cases. So if you have multiple windows open, say you have multiple Finder windows open, only the foremost one picks up the translucent sidebar, and the ones in the background, the inactive windows, don't. And I think that's fine. It's easier to tell in some ways what an active window is. But most of the time, your active window is on top of other ones, so the desktop doesn't even come through clearly. Like, it's a great idea. It's just an execution. There's lots of problems with this UI that clearly Apple's okay with. Like dark mode is just broken in places. Like I've got screenshots running the final GM, which is basically the final build, and like the dark menus look really cool, but then they're just broken in places. And sometimes they're more translucent than other times. Like the vibrancy is weird in dark mode. It's just, it doesn't feel as complete and as polished as I would expect it to at this point.
So I don't have an awful lot more to say, except I'm just having some weird things happen. Like, I've had to turn off transparency because for some reason, like, I'm just having terrible performance issues with mission control spaces and expose. Trying to move from space to space right now is like a multiple swipe gesture because like it goes like halfway and then I have to keep swiping for it to go the whole way. I don't really know what's going on.
Yeah, you sent me that video, and like my first thing was like, well, show me what activity monitor is doing. Like, is something eating up 400% of your CPU? And it wasn't. Everything was idling.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I have the same computer, like the exact same machine.
Mm-hmm. So maybe I need to check the K-base, reset the PRAM, and
you probably should reset the PRAM. We also haven't even made fun of the Finder icon yet.
I like it.
Should.
I like it.
Did you see? I linked
He's
to it.
so happy in the dock.
I love him in that way. He's like smiling at me. He's like, "Hey, Myke, you're doing a good job, buddy."
Did you see the Easter egg in the review? A friend of mine made the Finder icon into Walter White. It's pretty awesome.
Why? What? Because it looks
methed out was the adjective I used.
Okay, I was gonna say mellow, but sure, we can go with that.
Methed out. I'm really good at adjectives. My parents are very proud. So, like, all in all, like, Yosemite's a great update to OS 10. And in hindsight, it's crazy that iOS and OS 10 weren't better siblings until now. And yes, there's weirdness. Like, you have to have a Mac that does Bluetooth Low Energy. And, like, sometimes my Mac thinks I can open a Pages document, like, from my iPad that's, like, in a different building. Like, there's weirdness to it. But I think those sort of issues will get ironed out. And I think that it's great that you can move more seamlessly between your especially for me, my iPhone and my Mac. But I'm just not sold on some of the visual changes. And for me, thankfully, it's easy. I just turned off transparency and my Mac looks sane again. But I think it's just one of those things that maybe they went a little too far. Like people said that about iOS 7, but then iOS 8 didn't really bring any of that back. So I'm not holding out that this is going to be better in the future. But at least you can make some changes in system preferences to make it a little more sane.
One other thing that I just found frustrating is the Messages app window is bigger, and I can't make it back to the size it was before.
Sometimes Messages app will follow your mouse around. So you tab away from it and click into Safari, and the Messages window will follow you and be behind where your cursor is.
Hey, buddy, don't forget about your friends in there.
No, you got to text people. Like... that one's fun, and my favorite Yosemite bug is that sometimes you'll tab away from Finder, but Finder will still be in Finder will be in the background. Like instead of Finder in the upper left-hand window, you see Safari, but then you click in Safari and the Finder window comes back to the front. It's like, no, I put you back there. You're not the foreground app, but it's like Finder is really self-important now, and he's methed out, so he's just there all the time.
Finder and Messages are working together.
Yeah.
They want you to send some files to friends.
Walt and Jesse.
That's all they want.
So I don't know. Like, it's fine, I guess. The features are nice. I'm just... and I don't think... This is not me being grumpy, right? This is like, there are usability problems with Yosemite.
I think if I was not having this issue that I'm having with mission control, I would be very happy on the whole. I think it looks fine. I like how good it makes my Retina Mac look. I actually quite like the change to Helvetica because it looks so good
really nice
on the Retina Mac. Like it just looks so good. So once I get that, I think that I don't know if so it's an interesting thing. Okay, I have this problem more often when I use the trackpad than when I use my Magic Mouse. On my Magic Mouse, the spaces go fine. Like I can flick between them fine. But on my trackpad, that's when I start to see the hang-ups. So
it's weird.
You
should definitely do some PRAM, safe boot.
Yeah, I just haven't
maintenance
got around to
type
it yet.
stuff.
But yeah, I'm going to do.
Mail it to me. I could do it.
That seems like a no. Well, no, I don't want to do that. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Connected. If you'd like to find the show notes for this week's episode, Federico, where can they go?
Well, they can go to relay.fm/connected/10.
Excellent work, buddy. If you'd like to find us online, here's some places you can do that. You can go to 512pixels.net to find Stephen. He is also at ISMH. For Federico, you can go to maxstories.net. He is at Viticci, Viticci. And me and Federico host another show on this fine network called Virtual. It's about video games. And if you've never heard Virtual before, you should take a listen to last week's episode 9, where we spoke about Gamergate.
Yeah, I meant to say that at the top of the show. I just wrapped that episode up yesterday, and like, you guys did an excellent job at explaining like the background of it, and I could not be prouder of the two of you for calling out the just the complete insanity that's going on around that topic. People are terrible.
Yep.
So good job.
Basically, Federico did a really good job of explaining it, and then I just shouted. That was effectively what happened. If you want to hear that, you should go. It's Virtual episode 9. I am at Myke, IMYKE. You can find me on Relay FM, which is this fine podcast network of which you're listening to a show on. Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode. If you'd like to find our sponsors, then you should go to lynda.com and hover.com. We'll be back next week. Say goodbye, gentlemen.
Arrivederci.
Adios.